On May 21st, 1882, Doc Holliday was in trouble. Instead of being in a nice, comfortable hotel room, he was in jail. On May the 15th, he had been arrested in Denver by Perry Mallon, a man pretending to be a Los Angeles County deputy sheriff, but who in reality was nothing more than a swindler looking to get reward money for Holliday's capture. Mallon and Holliday had first met on May the 12th in Pueblo. It was a strange encounter, with Mallon at first warning Holliday about a fictitious threat on his life, and then ending with Mallon threatening to kill Holliday. But even if Mallon was a fake law officer, the danger facing Holliday, now that he was behind bars, was very real. Sheriff John Behan, friend of the cowboy element in Cochise County, wanted Holliday back in Arizona to face charges there. If Holliday was extradited to Arizona, then his enemies had a real chance of killing him. A reporter for the Denver Republican met Holliday while he was in jail and interviewed him. The following is a reading of that interview. From the Denver Republican, Denver, Colorado, May 22nd, 1882. Awful Arizona. Doc Holliday tells the story of the country of rustlers and killers. He predicts that he will be killed should he be taken back to Tombstone, and says he would rather be shot down here than murdered there. Death by the hands of an officer, preferable to hanging by thieves. A Republican reporter paid the noted Doc Holliday a Sunday visit yesterday for a quiet little chat on the situation from his standpoint. Holliday has a big reputation as a fighter, and has probably put more wrestlers and cowboys under the sod than any one man in the West. He has been the terror of the lawless element in Arizona, and with the Earps was the only man brave enough to face the bloodthirsty crowd, which has made the name of Arizona a stench in the nostrils of decent men. The visitor was very much surprised at Holliday's appearance, which is as different as could be from the generally conceived idea of a killer. Holliday is a slender man, not more than 5 feet 6 inches tall, and would weigh perhaps 150 pounds. His face is thin, and his hair sprinkled heavily with gray. His features are well formed, and there is nothing remarkable in them save a well-defined look of determination from his eyes, which the veriest amateur in physiognomy could hardly mistake. His hands are small and soft like a woman's, but the work they have done is anything but womanly. The slender forefinger which has dealt the cards has dealt death to many a wrestler with equal skill and quickness, and the slender wrist has proved its muscles of steel in many a deadly encounter, when a quick motion of a six-shooter meant everything. Holliday was dressed neatly in black with a colored linen shirt. The first thing noticeable about him in opening the conversation was his soft voice and modest manners. He explained the case as follows.
The men known as cowboys are not really cowboys. In the early days, the real cowboys, who were wild and reckless, gained a great deal of notoriety. After they passed out, their places were taken by a gang of murderers, stage robbers, and thieves, who were refugees from justice from the eastern states. The proper name for them is rustlers. They ran the country down there, and so terrorized the country that no man dared say anything against them. Trouble first arose with them by the killing of Marshal White by Curly Bill. Marshal White fell into my arms when he was shot, and I arrested Curly Bill. The trouble since then is familiar to all.
Do you apprehend trouble when you are taken back? Asked the visitor. Holliday paused for a minute and gazed earnestly out of the window of Jailer Lambert's room into the rain outside, and then said slowly,
If I am taken back to Arizona, that is the last of Holliday.
After a pause, he explained this by saying,
We hunted the rustlers, and they all hate us. John Behan, sheriff of Cochise County, is one of the gang, and a deadly enemy of mine, who would give any money to have me killed. It is almost certain that he instigated the assassination of Morgan Earp. Should he get me in his power, my life would not be worth much.
But Sheriff Paul of Tucson will take you to that place, will he not?
Yes, and there lies my only chance for safety. I would never go to Tombstone. I'd make an attempt to escape right outside this jail and get killed by a decent man. I would rather do that than be hung by those robbers there.
Cannot Paul protect you?
I am afraid not. He is a good man, but I am afraid he cannot protect me. The jail is a little tumble-down affair, which a few men can push over, and a few cans of oil thrown upon it would cause it to burn up in a flash, and either burn a prisoner to death or drive him out to be shot down. That will be my fate.
Haven't you friends there who would rally to your assistance?
Yes, the respectable element will stand by me, but they are all intimidated and unorganized. They will never do anything until some respectable citizen is shot down, when the people will rise and clean them out as they did at Fort Griffin, where 24 men were hung on one tree when I was there. The Tombstone rustlers are part of this Fort Griffin gang.
You are charged with killing Frank Stillwell. What do you know about that affair?
I know that Stillwell was a stage robber and one of Morgan Earp's assassins, and that he was killed near Tucson, but I do not know that I am in any way responsible for his death. I know that he robbed a stage, from the fact that he gave the money to a friend of mine to keep, and I know that he helped in the assassination of Morgan Earp, as he was seen running from the spot by several responsible citizens. Pete Spence was with him, and I am morally certain that Sheriff Behan investigated the assassination. He did it for 2 reasons. One was that he was the officer elected by the rustlers, and the other was that he was afraid of and hated Morgan Earp, who had quarreled with and insulted him several times. He feared Earp and had every inducement to kill him. A word further about this man Behan. I have known him a long time. He first ran against me when I was running a faro bank, when he started a quarrel in my house, and I stopped him and refused to let him play any more. We were enemies after that. In the quarrel, I told him in the presence of a crowd that he was gambling with money which I had given his woman. This story got out and caused him trouble. He always hated me after that, and would spend money to have me killed. He has always stood in with the rustlers and taken his share of their plunder, and in consequence he is in their power, and must do as they say. This is shown by the fact he has 5 rustlers under him as deputies. One of these men is John Ringo, who jumped on the stage of the Variety Theater in Tombstone one night about 3 weeks ago, and took all the jewels from the proprietor's wife in full view of the audience. These are the men who want me, and that is the kind of a country I am going back to for my health.
It's a nice, sociable country, I must admit, responded the visitor, who ran over mentally all the terrible outrages which had been committed of late by the noted rustlers, including a train robbery or 2 and several stage robberies. Holliday, in response to a question, then turned his attention to Mallon, the officer who followed him and caused his arrest here.
The first time I met him,
said Holliday,
was in Pueblo before I came to Denver. He approached me in a variety theater and, introducing himself, said he wanted to do me a favor in return for saving his life in Santa Fe once. I told him I would be very thankful for any favor he wanted to show me, but he must be mistaken about my saving his life in Santa Fe, as I had never been there. He did not reply to this, but told me that he had just come up on the train with Josh Stillwell, a brother of Frank Stillwell, whom I was supposed to have killed, and that he had threatened to shoot me on sight. I thanked him for his information, and he replied, "If you give me away, I will kill you." I told him I wasn't traveling around the country giving people away, and he left me. I met him in a saloon a few days afterwards and asked the barkeeper who he was. He told me that Mallon represented that he was a ranchman who had sold out in the lower country and was looking for a location, upon the strength of which he borrowed $8 at a time and $2 at another. I met the barkeeper several times afterwards, and he told me that the money had never been paid. I then considered that there was no truth in his story which he told to me. The next time I saw him was in Denver, when he dropped his guns on me and caused my arrest. Paul does not know him, and I believe he is a crank. He acted like one at Pueblo when he took down his clothes and showed a mark which he said was a bullet wound, but which was the mark of disease. I laughed in his face, the thing being so funny that I couldn't help it. One thing which Mallon tells gives him away bad. He said in your paper that he was standing alongside Curly Bill when the latter was killed. The facts are these. We were out one day after a party of outlaws, and about 3 o'clock on a warm day after a long and dry ride from the San Pedro River, we approached a spring, which was situated in a hollow. As we did so, 8 rustlers rose up from behind the bank and poured from 35 to 40 shots into us. Our escape was miraculous. The shots cut our clothes and saddles and killed 1 horse, but did not hit us. I think we would have been all killed if God Almighty wasn't on our side. Wyatt Earp turned loose with a shotgun and killed Curly Bill. Pete Spencer and Pony Deal, all of them wanted by the authorities, and Wells Fargo and Company. Pony Deal, I am told, was killed a few days ago on the railroad by soldiers. If Mallon was alongside of Curly Bill when he was killed, he was with one of the worst gang of murderers and robbers in the country.
Where are the Earps?
In Colorado, over in the Gunnison, I believe.
Didn't you have a quarrel with them in Pueblo a few weeks ago?
We had a little misunderstanding, but it didn't amount to much.
Would they help you now?
Yes, all they could, but they are wanted themselves, and of course couldn't go back with me without putting themselves in danger, without doing me any good.
Holliday, in conclusion, said that Mallon's claim that he, Holliday, had killed his partner in Utah was false, as at the very time Mallon claims the killing was done, the speaker was here in Denver, dealing for Charlie Foster in Babbitt's house, where Ed Chase is now located. Holliday further says that he was never in Utah. After leaving Denver, he went to Dodge City, Kansas, where he stayed some time, going to Arizona from there. In going back, he said he would be safe until he reached a point below Albuquerque, and that it would not be healthy for Mallon to go on the same train. Gary Roberts, author of Doc Holliday, The Life and Legend, called this interview a masterful performance, and I agree. Doc Holliday was worried for his life, and an interview allowed him to try and get as much popular support behind him as possible. I'd like to discuss a couple of points about this interview. First, Doc claimed that when Fred White, Marshal of Tombstone, died at the hands of Curly Bill Brocious, that White fell into the arms of Holliday, who then arrested Curly Bill. When Fred White was shot, it was Wyatt Earp, his brother Morgan, and Fred Dodge, who were on the scene, and who took Curly Bill into custody. Doc Holliday was in Tombstone and assisted Wyatt in checking out the town after the shooting, making sure that there would be no more trouble that night. Of course, that doesn't sound as good. Secondly, Doc links the cowboy faction in Arizona to a group of outlaws operating around Fort Griffin, and claims that 24 men were hanged on one tree when he was there. Fort Griffin, or more specifically, the small town outside of the fort, that was called the Flat, was one of the many places Doc would travel to on the frontier. A Fort Griffin Vigilance Committee was formed in 1876, and over the following 2 years, many suspected cattle and horse thieves were hanged. And like Holliday said, there was a mass hanging, although the numbers are different. 11 suspected horse thieves were hanged at one time by the Vigilance Committee. A Kansas paper covered the story. The citizens of Fort Griffin, Texas, held a regular hanging matinee the other day. 11 men were captured and hung by the indignant citizens for attempting to steal a herd of 7 horses. Doc Holliday would be saved from being extradited to Arizona with the help of friends, notably Bat Masterson. A fake charge of grand larceny in Pueblo, Colorado was created so that Pueblo would have legal priority over Arizona. Doc traveled with Bat Masterson to Pueblo on May the 31st, where Holliday was released on bail. I would like to thank the Western History and Genealogy Department of the Denver Public Library for finding this interview for me in their archives. It was more difficult to get a hold of, and that's why my other Doc Holliday interview video came out first, even though that interview took place after Doc had been released from jail.